Kate Moody is back with us in the studio with the latest on the business. And Kate, we're going to start with a big legal victory for the ride-sharing service Uber.
Yeah, they're about to be back on the streets again of London. This after a judge overturned a ban on the service. London is Uber's biggest European market with some 3.6 million users. In September, the regulator Transport for London revoked Uber's licence, citing failure to report criminal offences and conduct adequate background checks of their drivers. Since then, it has made changes to its global management and introduced a 24/7 phone support network in the UK capital. The magistrate has ruled that the changes were enough to secure a 15-month licence, during which time it's agreed to be audited and adhere to strict regulations. London Mayor Sadiq Khan welcomed the ruling and described the app as being on probation. Now, for some reaction, let's cross to the UK and speak to James Farrer, chair of the drivers' branch of the Independent Workers' Union of Great Britain. Thanks for joining us this evening. Your reaction to this ruling, which allows Uber to start operating again?
Well, I suppose in the short term, good evening, Kate, in the short run, it's a great relief for our members, the people we represent, that they know that they have a job to go to this morning, because frankly, their jobs were threatened now for the last 6-9 months due to gross mismanagement at Uber. So it's a relief that they have a job to go to tomorrow. On the other hand, we're very disappointed that what was not considered, what TfL did not challenge, Transport for London did not challenge legally here, was the treatment of workers. Let's not forget that Uber continues to be in violation of UK employment law. It continues to fight its own workforce to avoid paying the minimum wage. That wasn't considered by the judge in assessing Uber's fitness to hold a public license. And the second thing that wasn't considered, although passenger safety was considered and it should be, what was not considered is Uber's terrible record in terms of occupational safety for its own drivers. Now, we recently did a survey of drivers, of 550 drivers, and 50% of them have been physically assaulted on the job. 83% have been victims of hate crime. And yet 75% of Uber drivers that we surveyed tell us that when they go to report these matters to the police, they rarely or never get support from Uber on that. Now, that needs to change. If Uber has really changed, and if Uber is not just a wolf in sheep's clothing, it needs to change not only in how it manages passenger and customer safety, but how it treats its workers and how it helps to keep them safe as well.
Now, in this case, Uber's lawyers appear to have successfully argued that it has, in fact, turned over a new leaf. You seem a bit skeptical that that new leaf will actually help protect your drivers.
Well, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, Kate. If Uber really has turned over a new leaf, then it must stop fighting us in the courts to avoid paying the minimum wage. That's got to be the proof point for Uber. Uber is committed to a lot of changes, and they are good changes in terms of governance around how it cooperates with the police and how it cooperates with the regulator. But it has made no commitment and it has taken no action to change how it treats its workers. And until we see that change, we won't know. We can't believe that Uber has really changed until we see those changes for ourselves as workers.
What's the next step for your union going ahead with Uber?
Well, unfortunately, we started a legal challenge more than 2 years ago now, and we've won the right to worker rights, the right to earn the minimum wage. They're very basic minimal rights. They're not full employment rights. The right to minimum wage, the right to holiday pay, the right to whistleblower protection. And Uber has fought us. We've won those rights in 2016. We started the case in 2015, 3 years ago. Uber challenged that on appeal. It lost the appeal last September. And now it's appealing again to the Court of Appeal. And we will face Uber again in October this year. And, that's exhausting for us to have to fight Uber, a giant corporation, a unicorn worth $67 billion. We have to fight them for years on end just to earn the minimum wage. But we'll be back in court again in October. I'm convinced we'll win. So it's important that Uber really stops this fighting against its workforce and does the right thing now, not just for passengers, but for everybody.
James, briefly, is this a broader problem with the rise of the gig economy?
Well, it is, what we're seeing, and our union represents Deliveroo riders here in Britain, the delivery people, cycle couriers that operate a very similar model. And what we're seeing here is a business model that poses as a disruptive industrial strategy, a disruptive business model that's underpinned by technology. But really what we're seeing, the real disruption here is not the technology, not a paradigm shift in how technology changes work and the future of work. The dirty truth here is that the real competitive advantage for companies like Uber and Deliveroo and across the gig economy is the exploitation of workers. That's been the real difference. And unfortunately, what's happened is that these companies try to pretend that the law doesn't apply to them and that they have made the law obsolete. And yet, when we test the law, the law comes down on our side. So what these firms are doing is exhausting their appeals for years on end. And I think that is starting to catch up with the gig economy that, you know what, we all have to obey the law, whether you're an app or whether you're a traditional business.
All right, James Farrer of the Independent Workers' Union of Great Britain, thanks for joining us on France 24. Next, between more expensive raw materials and retaliatory tariffs on their own exports, U.S. industries are starting to feel the pinch of Donald Trump's trade policies. This Tuesday, the U.S. president has been targeting Harley-Davidson over its decision to shift some production out of the United States. Maud Julien reports.
U.S. firms are increasingly paying the price as President Donald Trump ramps up the trade war. The EU's top trade official said the U.S. knew there would be consequences when it put tariffs on European steel and aluminium imports.
Because there has to be consequences if you do not respect international global rules. And also, yes, of course, the consequences are that the American companies and the American business and American consumers, who we don't want to punish, but that is the unfortunate consequence, that they will react and that they will push pressure on the American administration.
One of the most high-profile examples yet of the trade dispute's impact is the decision by the iconic motorcycle company Harley-Davidson to move some of its production abroad to avoid the EU's retaliatory tariffs. Harley-Davidson said they would add $2,200 to each motorcycle the group exports from the US to Europe. The continent accounts for about 16% of Harley-Davidson's sales, its biggest market outside the US. Donald Trump reacted with a series of tweets, predicting the beginning of the end of the iconic brand and threatening to tax them like never before. Meanwhile, another major U.S. company's been impacted by the row. The price of Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey will increase in the EU by about 10% in the next few months. And that could just be the tip of the iceberg. The bank HSBC calculated that the U.S. economy could lose $7 billion as a result of the EU tariffs.
Let's check in on the day's trading action now. We are seeing investors taking a slight step back after steep losses on Monday. A mixed close in Europe, far more muted than at the start of the week. The DAX down slightly, about a third of 1 percentage point, because the German economy is so dependent on exports and therefore more exposed to global tensions. Wall Street's trending up slightly. The Nasdaq is leading gains this hour, up about half a percentage point at the moment, although we have seen the major indices slightly paring back in the last hour or so. Oil prices have risen, crude topping $70 a barrel as the U.S. government ordered companies to cut their purchases of oil from Iran to zero by November. That's part of the Trump administration's ongoing efforts to isolate Tehran. Laura, about half an hour to go before Wall Street closes, and I'll be back with the closing bell later on.
We will look forward to that, Kate. Thank you very much indeed. We're taking a short break. Don't go away, much more for you right after this.